And,
I blame YouTube.
I'm blaming YouTube right now. So, hello, everybody.
Hey, friends.
Hey. Hey, at least we didn't have 30 seconds of no talking, though, with us just like, is it live?
Yep, just little like keyboard noises.
Yep. This is much more professional. So, yeah. So we're gonna be talking about the menu today. It's the latest hit that we're reviewing. It seems to be doing well from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, this was really interesting. I like a movie that has an abstract plot, and this is, I would say, an abstract plot.
Yeah. It's like
the way to understand it is to.
It's got so professional. It's somewhat of a simple plot with a lot of themes in it, right? Would you say?
Yeah, I bet that there's a lot of metaphors in here that I'm not picking up on, and some of the ones that I did were really interesting and thought-provoking.
For sure, same. I thought it would be good to talk about on here. So the plot is we got a couple here. They're meeting some others, getting on a boat to go to an island for a fancy dinner with a world-famous chef. He seems to be like a Chef Ramsay level famous top tier cook. And so they've paid big bucks to be here. And it's I pointed out to you before when I recommended watching it, it reminded me of Glass Onion a lot. It's very different, but there's a lot of similarities in funny ways. Just the ensemble cast showing up on a rich guy's island for a dinner party with a certain ending that kind of, I don't know. I thought they had funny parallels, but it was a fun watch, though. I would definitely recommend it. It was not perfect, but it was fun. And so this chef is a bit of a, I don't know if he's like if he's a hermit now. He's kind of, that's not the right word for it, but he's kind of he's living in like a little rundown house and on this island, and he has these chefs that are like cult followers basically, and they're living in a looks like a military building. Like they're just on these bunk beds and all living together, and it's very strange situation that these guests are walking into. So as things unfold, we start to find out that the chef has some issues with his customers, and with these people in particular sometimes it seems like arbitrary, which we can get to in a little bit, but so I would say there's not a whole lot to talk about without spoiling much, right?
I would say that too. Spoiler alert, they're going to start soon in this one.
Yeah, let's just get right into it.
If you haven't seen it, watch it before you go further in this review.
Yeah, I would give it a thumbs up. It's not, it didn't blow my socks off, but it was fun. It was a fun watch.
Yeah.
So go watch it and maybe come back. So, there's not much really to say without spoiling it much, because the tone it sets early on, which is part of the thing I had a little bit of a problem with. It was really on the nose, right? Like from the opening scenes, you're like, oh, this is going to end very badly, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of the music choices and like the way that they finished off saying certain things, you knew that it was foreboding. Like it was going to have a dark ending.
yeah I think it was the music too, for sure. It was a little overhanded, I think. Sometimes I loved the music. I thought the music was really well done. I just thought the placement of it a couple of times early on in the movie gave a little bit too much. It was foreshadowing a little bit too obviously. So but with that said, again, I did love the music. It was really interesting. They had those violins going. There was a gong multiple times. Just a big gong would be struck and it would just ring out for a really long time. It was an interesting mood setter for sure. I would just say with the music, I think early on in the movie they could have had something a little more lighthearted to make it a little more surprising when things started going wrong which they do. So we have Nicholas Hoult, who I know him most from, he plays the Beast in X-Men, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't remember him being very, he didn't really stick out to me in that movie, but that might have been because of the cast he was surrounded by. A lot of his scenes were with that Jennifer Lawrence lady, and also, he had a
Hugh Jackman, all the big ones.
Yep, Huge Jackman. And so I thought that, is that his real name? He was a gym teacher, Hugh Jackman.
I didn't.
I wonder if Hugh Jackman was like a funny nickname he was given, I don't know. But so I would say though, in this movie, I thought he was awesome. I thought he played his role perfectly. Anya Taylor-Joy, I first saw her in Queen's Gambit, I believe, and then The Northman. She was the muse in The Northman. She wasn't a muse. That's not what she was. She was she played a very interesting character in that. I'm still undecided about her. What do you think about her? What are your thoughts?
In this movie?
I think she's great in this movie for sure. I'm just not sure about her. I'm just interested to see where she goes.
Yeah. I think so. Something about her from The Northman that carried over in this movie too for me is, even though there's not really much going on in her dialogue to suggest this, she always kind of has like a mischievous look or something. It's hard to even describe, but yeah, I always wonder, like, are you up to no good?
Yep. Yep. She definitely had that in Northman, right? Because she's like plotting, in her mind
to escape and everything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe that's part of what her character was in this one too, and that's why I'm seeing that. But
Yep.
yeah, before we go further, I will say I didn't have any acting issues in this movie. I thought that the characters acted their parts well.
Yes.
Some of the issues I had with the characters were more writing problems, I think. And
yes.
I thought the actors and the actresses did very well.
I totally agree with that. I think they played their parts probably exactly how the writer intended them to be. Like, I bet whoever wrote this, we'll look into that in a second, but like, he probably saw this and was thrilled, Yeah,
I think so.
I think she played her character, and Nicholas Hoult played his character, and the chef, Ralph Fiennes, awesome. He did an amazing job. I think he is what made the movie for me. And I bet the writer was just thrilled because they did an awesome job.
I agree. This chef was incredible in this. He was such a good actor. He was, I don't know how much I would have liked the movie if he wasn't in it, honestly. He was really, really good.
Yeah, I forgot this, just real quick. The writer Seth Rice, he has his background's in comedy. Will Tracy, I did look this up last night. That's right. He's written for Succession. The director of the movie directed, I think, 8 episodes of Succession. I heard it's a good show. I'm just not interested. Oh, and then some comedy. So they both have some comedy background. And so with Ralph Fiennes, the cook, the chef, I always love him. He's just top-notch actor. He's so intense. I have seen him. He has range. I'm one that comes to mind. Oh, there it is. Grand Budapest Hotel. I love this movie so much, and he is so endearing in it. It's a really endearing movie. He has a cameo in Hail Caesar. That's awesome. The first thing I saw him in was probably The Constant Gardener. I saw that.
Was he Voldemort?
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's him.
Wow.
Yeah. Schindler's List. Oh my God, amazing.
Wow.
He plays. Was he like a lieutenant, or he's not a general?
It's been a long time since I saw Schindler's List.
He's amazing in that too. And yeah, No Time to Die. That's right. He's M now in the Bond series.
The King's Man too.
The King's Man. Yep, he's in that series now. I mean, I forgot about his cameo in Hail Caesar. He's just awesome. I mean, looking through his catalog here, Skyfall. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's Bond too. But so I couldn't say enough good things about him. He's he just always kills it every time I see him.
This was probably one of the harder roles in the movie too, for him to act. And yeah, he just totally grand slam. He kills it.
Yes. I think it probably was difficult to figure out. There's a lot of something I really appreciate about the movie is there's a lot of nuance, a lot of little reaction shots of people that are kind of guiding us through the feelings we're supposed to be feeling as the viewers. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of moments between people that they just, again, I think as I was saying with those three main actors a moment ago, I think they are reacting exactly how the writer intended them to, writers. But yeah, these three in particular, I think they really stand out. Nicholas Hoult, like Chef, I think he has a lot of very nuanced reactions to things that you're just kind of like you know exactly what's going on in his head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know for me watching it, he's the most likable character from the beginning in the story, or for me at least. Because you just feel like he really appreciates this chef. He really appreciates the food, which is at first what you kind of think the whole movie is about. And then I will say that the turn later in the movie just makes you like despise him, kind of. And it's a really quick turnaround.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was meaningful.
Yeah, it's kind of quick. They got little moments where, you know, you can see he's basically, he would throw his date under the bus in a second for the chef.
Oh yeah.
That starts to come through a little bit, but you know, I didn't not like him as far as that whole cast goes, or the whole group of people that have assembled here. Tyler is his name. He was definitely not one of my least favorites. That's for sure. Him and Margot, I liked him. I thought they were on like a little date, but it wasn't quite that, apparently. So
I mean, you know, without going into too much about the plot yet, the just the way he's reacting at first, before you really know how like dark he is, you just kind of see him reacting to like traumatic things going on around him, like not at all. He's just like still obsessed with the food experience.
Right.
So you're right. It wasn't all at once. You gradually don't like him because he's just like not aware of the human situation that's happening around him.
I think it's that moment that I realized it. It's when the mess, when the mess happens, they have a one of those reaction shots that lets you know exactly what that character is thinking. They just show him eating. He's just like, this is really good. So that was when I was like, oh, there's something wrong with him. That's for sure. So lots of things to praise about the movie, for sure. A lot of great acting, communicating to us really important information, great music, although the placement sometimes is a little bit too much. I thought the score in the second half of the film especially is really, really, really great. I like the setting. The set here is really neat, the kitchen and the dining room, and so some of the things, you know, there were some things I didn't like about the movie also, which is what puts us in that. Well, okay, we could just get into it now, and then we could say some other things if we wanted to afterwards. But
sure.
The theme I was picking up on was that, like, you could take this and apply it to all of the arts. Cooking is obviously an art. The chef here is an artist, and I could see this. I believe it is a criticism of art critics in general, and not just the critics, but artists. There is an artist there, the actor, and there's also the just consumer, I guess you could call it. It's not a word I like, but you know, I mean, it's just, you know, I don't think of ourselves as consumers. We're you know, not just that's kind of the point of like having our talks, because we enjoy discussing what we do and don't like about movies and TVs and music and all sorts of other stuff. Consumer is somebody I think of who just consumes it, and they're not really thinking it through. They're not really like thinking, what is this product trying to tell me? What am I supposed to feel about this? They're just kind of eating it up. And we see that as we see them all dining. Most of the people here are just consuming. And that's the point for the chef. That's what he's upset about, is people are just mindlessly consuming. They're not enjoying his art. And so, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think so you should keep talking about this topic, because I think for me there were two main topics that they were talking about, and one of them is definitely the art aspect of it, and the appreciation versus the consuming of it.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And then the other side of it, I think for me, or the other main topic, was the the server compared to the customer, and that kind of dynamic. And the way the chef actually words it at one point is he calls them the givers and the takers, which I thought was interesting.
Neat. Okay. That's a good, that's a good split of the two sides of it, I think. So going with the art critique theme, the critic versus the consumer, I think a common mistake to walk away from this would be that the critics are wrong in criticizing their passion, because that's the thing about, so Lillian is she works for a magazine. She's there with her her editor or something, but she's a famous food critic, and she has apparently done some reviews on restaurants that put restaurants out of business, and that's why the chef's mad at her, Chef Slowick. And so Lillian is there, and Tyler's the other critic, you could say. Maybe he's like a Yelp reviewer, or he could just be somebody who he says at one point that he's watched all of Chef Slowick's TV shows multiple times, and he knows it all, and he knows a lot about food, and so they're both in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the wrong takeaway would be that they are missing the point in criticizing food, or in like critiquing, not just criticizing, but critiquing food in general. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's right. I think you have people like Lillian. So if you're a chef and you're aspiring to be great, and you look up to Chef Slowick, you want to know how good you are. And when you launch your restaurant, or you start working at a high-end restaurant, and you have the critic come in, you should want an honest review of your work. Mm-hmm. And if you really are as great as you set out to be, or as you believe to be, you want those positive criticisms. So it goes both ways. Mm-hmm. I think what we are doing, even though this is on obviously a small scale, but like, the idea of it to me hit just as hard as if we were one of the channels that had a lot of viewers, because what we're doing primarily wouldn't really change very much. I think that critiquing poor art is very important. I think it is. I think it helps with people's I think it's good logic exercises, and I think it's not good to consume. I think for me, when I started realizing there were some movies that had some serious problems I didn't realize at first, and I started looking into the critics, it strengthened, it helped me not be such a consumer anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But the point is that it goes both ways. If you want really good art, you need the critics out there who are pretty ruthless and will say what they believe is true. Sometimes maybe they're lying, but the movie never says Lillian ever lied. It just says she put out reviews that sank restaurants. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of vague. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with Tyler being the way he is. He's really passionate about food. Mm-hmm. He's trying to show his date Margot He's trying to tell her about it. I think they both have some personality problems. Obviously, Tyler has some serious ones, but the gist of it for him is like he's really passionate about food. I think, again, it would be wrong to walk away from it like I wouldn't want to be like Tyler. It's like there's nothing wrong with Tyler being really into food. There's nothing wrong with people being really into movies, and like so. It's part of the world of art.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, you know, it's important for anyone who's producing any form of art to listen to your critique, and not even just art, but anything you're passionate about and that you want to get better at. You need honest criticism. It's the only way that you'll improve is if people are honest with you about your flaws. They give you constructive criticism, and they also praise the things that you're doing right. It's very important, and I definitely think that was a big theme here. I will say that the way that Lillian and her editor are talking is cringe.
It is, right?
They're just their words, and it reminds me of like an actual like art snob at like an art gallery.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Oh yes, and this like postmodern blah blah. You know, it's just like the words that they're using, the way they're describing it, even the way they're like moving their hands when they talk. It's just like, oh god.
Yes.
But yes,
Very
I definitely agree that the aspect of criticism being positive, and that I don't see anything wrong with the things that were shown that Lillian has done as a critique or a critic. It's like, yeah, obviously if you're an honest critic operating at high end and people are going to listen to what you say, if you give an honest review that's negative about a business, it could put them out of business.
For sure.
But if it's honest, then that's a good critic.
That's all it is. If she's being honest, if the movie had come out and said, oh, this restaurant paid her $20,000 to write an article and it put this other guy out of business, and like that would be different.
Right.
But that's not what the movie says. So.
Right. And another thing on that same line of the art appreciation is the chef really doesn't like the character who's a movie star.
Right.
And his only reason
really interesting.
is because he had one day off in like 2 weeks and he watched one of his movies and he didn't like it.
That's it.
And he's not even saying that the guy acted poorly in it. He just didn't like the movie.
He says, your face haunts me.
Yeah.
It's really funny because the last movie we saw him in was, what was it called? Not Bad Santa, but that's stupid Santa Claus movie we saw. He was the bad guy in it. Violent Night. Isn't that funny that the last movie we saw him in was consumerist garbage?
It was terrible.
It was like really low bar entertainment.
But I don't blame him, you know? Like, he's an actor.
Right, he's an actor, but he picked the job. Like, he took the job. He read the script and he took the job. So I think he's totally justified in being burned in a s'more at the end of this movie. No, I'm just kidding. But like, you know, I just think it's like that scene when that happened, when the chef is saying that to him and he hangs his head and he says, "You're right, chef." It's like, yeah, like the last thing I saw you in was just cheesy.
And all he says to the chef is, he's like, "Well, I didn't direct it."
Right? Yeah, that's true. But like I think when he gets his jobs, he's just like, oh, I can just like be myself, right? And they're like, yeah, you can just do your thing. And that, because he's always the exact same person. And I think it's really ironic they picked him. I don't know if they did that on purpose. But I bet you Ralph Fiennes, knowing the class that he is in of actors, that he loved giving that little speech to him. He probably was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
There might have been a little real life tension there. Who knows?
I can't think of what movies I've liked John Leguizamo in.
Right.
But I know there are, because there's something likable about his personality, like his standard who he is, the way he talks and everything.
Yeah.
But like you said, he's on a much lesser scale of acting than someone like the chef.
Yeah, he even gives like he makes a comment at some point about like, because his assistant is like, well, pitch your show, your cooking show. What's it going to be like? And he's like, oh, I go here, I eat some food, I fake an orgasm, and then I'll go to like this place here, and then I'm going to say some stuff about racism being bad, and blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. Emmy coming my way. And it's like,
yeah,
he is he is that guy. Like he is that guy. So
it's definitely also a theme in Hollywood. Like that whole talk that he said, that line was really meaningful that you just brought up, because he is like, I'm going to go to some village in Africa and,
that's what it was.
I'll just have all these impoverished kids around me and boom, Emmy.
Exactly.
And
right.
It's it is like, that is how a lot of Hollywood thinks right now. And it's a shame, because there's a masterful art form that's been happening in Hollywood over the years, and then there's a lot of trash that's being produced through it too. And a lot of it is because of that mentality.
For sure. Yeah. I just think he's come off for years as a really douchey guy. This is him when Elon Musk bought Twitter. He said, "If all of us liberals leave Twitter, it will become a cesspool of disinformation, hate mongering, and disrespect, and it will dismantle itself and collapse!" Exclamation point. Great job, Elon. Like, that's him. That's like a 14-year-old tweet. That's like how a 14-year-old talks.
He sounds like
adults
LeBron.
don't talk like this.
He's probably friends with LeBron.
It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And he's got a bunch of stuff about, I'm no stranger to Black Lives Matter. That's my life. And it's like, all right, whatever, dude. But go hang out with your like other millionaire friends and circle jerk about it. But anyways, I thought it was ironic the way he was cast as this role. Very ironic. I enjoyed that. But so I would say, though, the cherry on top of the theme about art critique would be the ending when we got Anya, Margot. She's on the boat, right? She's got the cheeseburger. And it had, I think, my least favorite scene. The s'more scene is just like, really? We can talk about that. But I would just say her looking away from the burning building where she knows everyone's dying inside there, and she's all just like, yeah, like I made it, and she takes a bite of the cheeseburger. And I felt like it was just saying, like, just eat the cheeseburger, enjoy the movie, don't think about it too much. I think sometimes that's true. Okay, I also enjoyed the fact that we had just reviewed, like an hour before watching this movie, we had just reviewed John Wick. We had watched John Wick 3 and reviewed it. John Wick is a cheeseburger, right? John Wick 3 is a well-made cheeseburger. And I love cheeseburgers. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I would say that, like, it's good to, just I do pay mine. Like, I like to enjoy movies. I don't want to not enjoy them anymore. So so we can have a good cheeseburger, but sometimes something's presented as the like oyster on rock.
I was just gonna compare those two, because at the beginning of this, the first meal that the chef serves to everyone, it comes with this whole story of the scallop and its ecosystem, and he serves them scallops on the top of a rock from the island with all the vegetation from the island, and they're just eating it. And most of the people are like, oh yeah, like this is okay, like it's kind of like whatever, it's like seaweed and a scallop on the top of a rock. But the story was really interesting, and the way he describes it adds a certain beauty to that meal. But I would choose the cheeseburger every day.
Same.
So that's kind of, I don't know. I thought it was a good contrast when she does order the cheeseburger. He makes it. The scene of him frying the cheeseburger.
Love that
oh,
scene.
man, it was great. And
it did make you want that cheeseburger.
If you are trying to be on a diet and you don't want to have cheeseburgers, don't watch this movie, because you'll want one. Also, if you're trying to quit cigarettes, also don't watch this movie.
Oh yeah.
Because there's multiple scenes with Margot. They're like, no, you shouldn't have the cigarette, it's gonna ruin your palate, and she's just like, but I want a cigarette, like, right. And then like all this crazy stuff is happening, and she just like goes to the bathroom to smoke a cigarette, and there's just multiple scenes with the cigarette that were like, oh, that would be nice.
Bring me one. Yeah, I could see that. There's some Scorsese movies are like that. It's hard to watch if you're a smoker. Try not to smoke. But that's the opening line of the movie. Hey, please don't smoke. It'll kill your palate. I thought that was interesting
Mm-hmm.
because he's saying to her, like, it's not like, hey, please don't smoke. It'll kill you. He's saying, like, it'll kill your palate, for, what I mean? It showed immediately what his priority was.
Oh, yeah.
It's not caring about her.
And it becomes more meaningful later in the story when you realize that Margot is actually a hooker and that he is like paid her knowingly to come to this dinner with him to die.
Yeah.
And so he's worried about her smoking a cigarette. But it's not because of her health. It's because of her palate.
Yeah. It fits perfectly.
It fits. Yep.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm. Here's a little scene. I was just skimming through and it just brought up, Ralph Fiennes when one of his little meetings with Margot in the back. He's in his office. His acting was so good. He's like, just like he's basically on the verge of tears, but he still looks strong, and he's just having this emotional moment with her, which I'll say something about in a second. But man, his acting was so good. He was just spot on the whole time. With that said, it's so silly that this guy has this crazy plan to bring all these people here and enact this basically murder-suicide on everybody. And then he's like, oh, who's this lady here? I'm going to divert a ton of time and attention to her all of a sudden for like...
Because he wanted to know if she was a giver or a taker.
Yeah. Is that it? He's just trying to decide whether to let her leave or not?
And a couple of the things were a test for her. Like when he asked her to get that barrel, he wanted to see if she was a giver and she would bring the barrel, or a taker and try to like
leave,
which I don't think defines you as a taker. But I
hear you.
Again, I really did like that. That was the most meaningful concept in this to me.
That he was like testing her to see,
no, just the giver versus the taker.
Yep.
Just the cooks. From my understanding, because it's not really explained why any of these cooks want to die with him here, but they obviously are all willing to. And I think my understanding of it is that it's because they feel similar to him, that they're just sick of the takers. They're sick of people taking the food that they make and eating it. They're sick of the old guy who goes there 7 or 8 times and doesn't even remember one meal that he's had there, even though the chef explains it in great detail every time he's there. I get it. I used to work at a Subway for years, and I worked at pizza places before that. And I know from experience that you can put a lot into something that you're giving to a customer. You can put a lot of effort in. You can be proud of it, even if it's just a sandwich or a pizza. You're like, you put it together, and you're like, wow, this is a really good one. This came out awesome. And then the customer can just not give a shit at all and even be rude to you when all you're doing is providing them a service. And I really like that about it. At first, he wants to put her in the category of a giver, and that was because she is a whore, and he determined that she is providing a service for people that they are taking and that she's giving. But then there's some back and forth with her where he changes his mind a couple times. But he's kind of going crazy, and it doesn't all add up to that. But just the concept of like, these cooks are all so sick of these like snooty, high class people coming to this island and eating their food without even like giving a shit that they're like working so hard to produce like this meager amount of food on their plate at such a high level. It's hard to compare it to other things, I guess, but it's almost like going to watch like Michael Jordan play basketball and then just like telling someone, oh yeah, it was just like watching a high school game. It's like, well, this is the best in the world. Like, it's not really the same as watching a high school game. But to some people it would be. And I get that, but I can see how it would be frustrating to feel like people just aren't appreciating the level of art and of product that you're achieving. That was an interesting theme for me. I know I've definitely felt that way in food service, and I was not a master chef.
Right. But I know what you mean though. Even when the quality or the talent is scaling up, like the feeling that you have about what you're doing doesn't change too much. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, it's something really cool. I'm enjoying, you know, watching your kids playing in their basketball league. It's really neat because, you know, you see the kids who definitely don't care, and that's pretty cute. But the kids, there's some of them really care. Your kids really definitely care a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, they're not thinking like, oh, well, it's not the NBA, it doesn't matter. It's like,
right.
no, like they care about it. They want to do a good job. They want to make their parents proud, make the coach proud, just be proud of themselves. And like, yeah, I don't know. I know what you mean about like, you should have some pride in your work no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what level you're working at. So
for sure. And it's just that message, putting it out there that like people should be appreciative also of like what people have put into what they're consuming. And that's where the critic comes in. Like, it's important to be able to differentiate between a lousy product that you're receiving or a lousy meal that someone cooked for you versus like a masterpiece.
For sure.
It's, you know, these chefs, like a lot of the scenes are just, you're watching them bent over at their workstations, and each of them is preparing a very small aspect of the next meal. Like they're all doing like a really small piece and a really, you know, but it's meaningful. You know what I mean? Like they're working so hard on each course, and they're not big or elaborate, but there's a lot going on. I watch a good amount of cooking shows too, and I know that there's a lot to it.
Pretty amazing, right?
Right. It's not just food, but like he said, like he's dealing with all of the elements of nature and like life and death itself with cooking meat and plants.
Yeah.
Just knowing when they're going to expire, when they're perfect. You know, that line that they say about the smoker at the beginning, that it's smoked for 120 days. And they're like, well, what would happen if it was 121? And she's like, you die from the bacteria. And, you know, obviously most food isn't exactly as dire as that time frame, but you know, it can be done right and it can be done wrong.
For sure, it definitely can. I think I would rather everyone be the overzealous critic than be the people who are most of the people at this dinner, and they show it explicitly over and over again. They're talking about stuff that has nothing to do with the food as they're eating all this food, and they're proving the chef's point. And it looks like, I would argue that the only two people here who are actually enjoying the food are the two critics, Tyler and Lillian.
Yeah.
And like, I think it is everybody else. They're not even paying attention to it. And I think that's a lot. I think that's a lot of it. It's a lot of consuming. So, yeah.
Yeah, there were some interesting things in here too. Just to mention them, like that he laser printed photographs of different wrongdoings of each of the characters. It was kind of interesting. You know, they had the characters that were kind of his financial backers, like CEOs maybe. And they printed bank statements on theirs, which are fraudulent. And he printed pictures of one guy cheating on his wife with Margot, which he didn't know. That was a weird coincidence.
It's a weird coincidence for sure.
It's contrived.
There you go.
But, you know, and then there's a one scene that I didn't understand at all. Like some things, it was like, okay, like that, I understood it. It just seemed like maybe there could have been more to the tortilla thing going on, like more secret stuff that you're being revealed or whatever. But the scene that I really didn't understand was when the chef brings them all outside and then he says, all right, the men are now going to run away, and then my chefs are going to chase them down and hunt them like prey. And you know, we already know because they've told us that they're all going to die tonight. So I thought they were going to be hunted down then and killed kind of like a artistic way or something.
And then made into cheeseburgers.
Something, you know. But then they just run away and they catch him and they bring him back. And then they just resume back in this
It is weird, right?
room.
It's a weird thing.
I want someone to give me some ideas on what that meant. Like, I think there's a metaphor there
So it's Men's Folly. That's the name of the course.
Men's Folly.
And I think it's just that all these men will abandon their wives or dates in a moment's notice. But it's still silly. Like, I'm not.
But it goes the other way too. Like, what my wife saw when watching this is the men are in immediate danger. Like, they are being told that they're going to be hunted by chefs who have like very good knife skills. They've already mentioned.
Yeah.
And the women all just stand there. My wife was saying, if these guys were just about to chase you into the woods, I would be coming with you to help you fight them off. She wouldn't have just stood there. So I think it goes both ways. Even though they called it Men's Folly,
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know. It is weird that they all leave each other. I think it's like you all know you're in mortal danger. Why would you separate from your girls or your guys at that point?
Leah could be like, well, starting now, I identify as a man, and I'm going to. And then he'd be like, oh, damn, she got us.
Yeah, or just like equal rights, and they run out with this. Equal opportunity?
Yeah, equal opportunity. That's an interesting thought, though. I didn't even think of that. I was just thinking like, oh, damn, they all just, like, they show Richard, the husband, the cheating husband, who's just like, I'll send somebody in the morning. And he takes off, and she's just kind of like, what? But yeah, I could see that though. I could see it both ways.
It's weird. I mean, none of these couples are very close. You know, you got
that's part of it for me. Like the only person there that you're supposed to like is Margot.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And and so she's with the guy who hired her, and he doesn't even run because he came there to die.
Right. Yeah. His reaction's funny. He's just like, yeah, okay.
He's like, all right, like. And then they're like, run. And he's like, okay, fine. And he goes over to the window of the restaurant that they just came from. He doesn't even like really go anywhere.
I thought that was funny. I do think it holds up after a second viewing. Unlike, again, a lot of similarities to Glass Onion, and not in some in very specific, obvious ways, and some not so much. But unlike Glass Onion, I do think a second viewing holds up pretty good. A lot of the little things with Tyler, you're like, oh yeah, like he's a psycho, who's here to die, and
dragging this girl in with him.
I know,
like that's the word. That's when I really hated him. Like I thought he was like a psychopath when like the guy got his finger chopped off and he didn't respond. I understood maybe people didn't, or I thought that Tyler maybe didn't think it was real when the first guy shot himself. I thought maybe they thought it was theatrics in some way.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know he was there to die at that point. But then when you definitely had one of the customers just have their finger chopped off, that didn't seem like anyone could take that as like an act. It seemed very real.
So I definitely agree. I would say quickly before I forget, it's the second movie in a row where a guy gets his wedding finger cut off.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Isn't that weird?
I was wondering if I had deja vu, but it was from John Wick 3.
Yeah. Yep. Chef Slowick is like, you are excommunicado.
But then he's like, wait, I just needed the ring. I didn't.
He's like, unlike the other time, there is dish soap here. Oh, damn, what was I going to say? Okay. About Chef Slowick. I have a problem with, like, I think he did a great job. I think his character is fun, but I wish he was more, he doesn't really have great reasons for everyone being there. I don't think. I think, especially with, I'm looking through the list right now of the guys, because there was somebody in particular there. Oh, it was the actor, the movie star. Because I was joking about him deserving to be in this more. Like, the reason for him being there is so silly, and it's so arbitrary.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, I just picked you because you were in a movie I saw once on my one day off in months. And
arbitrary is a good reason, or a good word for that. And another funny thing, too, that just, it was almost like a class issue at this point, because so the actor is like, sure, yeah, tell me why I deserve to be here. And then he's like, well, why is she here? Because he's got the girl with him.
Exactly.
And the chef says to her, what college did you go to? She says Brown. So that's a fancy, expensive college.
Yeah.
And then he's like, student loans? And she's like, no. And he's like, okay, good. You're dying.
Yeah, I really didn't like that.
Yeah.
That was a low point for Chef Slowick for me. I was like,
Yep.
really? That's your judgment now? So you're going to go through all this trouble with Margot to like figure out if she deserves it or not. But with Felicity, it's just like, oh, you went to Brown and you don't owe money? Dead. You're dead. You're dying tonight. It's like, well, maybe she's super smart.
Yeah,
Maybe
or like a super good person. Like, who knows? Like, it's just like you can't assume because someone paid for your college that you're a like demon.
Yeah,
like,
and you can't even assume somebody paid for her college.
Right.
It could have been her who paid for her college by getting a high-end job.
That's true.
Maybe she paid it off really quickly and lived in a one-room little apartment for 5 years. Or maybe she's super smart and she was an athlete and she got dope scholarships. Like, you don't know. There's so many more questions to ask.
Right. And that's, again, down to the writer. And there was multiple things that I thought the writer kind of made messy like that. Like, it just didn't, it kind of ruined a character that we loved, because I loved the chef as a character.
I do too, and I generally still do, but I just wish it wasn't so, it's all over the place, because it starts to build an idea like, oh, they're all here for very specific reasons, but by the end it's like, well, not all of them actually. Some of them are just here for shit luck
and one of them's your mom, your actual mom.
Oh, that was another thing. Nothing came of that. Nothing.
She
came
just
of that
burned with them.
all.
No.
Yeah, they just they don't show her for a really long time, and then it's like there's a cutaway shot right before they light the s'more. They show her for a second. She's passed out with the wine glass, and that's it. But there was no she has one line in the movie, and it's "You're a handsome boy" to Tyler when he gets the chef's coat, and that's it. So there was no big, not a twist, but I thought there was going to be a point made with that there. But it's basically she's just there for when Slowick talks about his dad and them being drunk and stuff.
Yeah, just the abusive father story, and then the other guy shoots himself right after that. So that was odd. I think so. Going back to the critic topic again. So Tyler is a food critic of some kind. We don't really know what his profession is, but he's definitely some kind of high-end food critic of some sort. Because
yes, and I would say it's not in food. I don't think he's a professional, or I don't think his profession has to do with food at all, because he talks about food as something out. So
ethereal almost.
Yeah, right. I'm thinking of how he's talking to Margot about it, but now, so I'm gonna actually take back what I said, because when we first meet Tyler and Margot, we're thinking they're boyfriend girlfriend, which is not true. She's a hooker, and he just got her for the weekend. So she wouldn't know about him and food and all that stuff, actually. So I was thinking like a boyfriend girlfriend, she would know he would be into food if his job was in food. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when I watched it, I thought he was some kind of food. Like, I was picturing a YouTube personality or something where he eats food and just describes it in great detail on camera or something.
Camp foodie.
But it's all guesswork, because they don't camp foodie. But they don't really say what his job is. But anyway, when he gets up, what I was gonna say is when the chef calls him out, first of all, tells him you are here and you knew ahead of time. He kind of sorts out that he knew ahead of time that he was going to die, and that's why he wanted to come. And then he questions them you still invited Margot?
Yeah.
What the hell? And so he calls him out on that, which was really fucked up of Tyler.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the chef is
he
stands him up and he treats him like I would think you would treat a kindergartner for a little while. He's like, here's your jacket.
Yeah.
Now you're a cook. I'm going to write your name on it. Here you go, Tyler. And then he asks him what he wants. And he's mocking him for this whole scene.
For sure.
He's just get up here and try to do what I do, since you know so much about food. And then he tries to make lambs and what does he call them? Leeks and
I've
shallots.
Never purchased in my life.
Yeah, leeks and shallots, which I don't even know what they really are. But anyway, he cuts them poorly. Apparently, again, I wouldn't know that. But the chef comments about that, and this guy is just being made a fool. And then the chef whispers in his ear something, and Tyler goes and kills himself.
Yeah.
And I think it's something along the lines of you're not even worth my time to kill you. Just go kill yourself. Like something
like that.
So, but I think this was the writers, kind of like you were saying that like they're trying to downplay the critics or to show like you don't know what you're really talking about, like, because you can't do it.
Right.
Which, in this situation, I liked how he was kind of like, he made a show of him because like we just found out he basically murdered like indirectly Margot by bringing her here. Although she survives, but he doesn't know that that's going to happen.
She gets away with the burger too.
That immaculate burger. But I think that I think the writer is going a little bit too far against the critics in this scene. I just think it's kind of like, this guy is really passionate about food, whether he can cook it or not. You know that from the beginning. That's not the point,
right? You don't need to be a world-class chef to criticize food. That's just not how anything works.
For sure. And, any source of art that you look at or any entertainment that you look at, some of the people who like it the most are going to be the least capable of doing it, which is part of like, what is attractive about some art forms. Like I really love music, but I can't make it necessarily, but it doesn't take away from like my experience of it, and being able to like it and critique it.
Absolutely. It definitely doesn't take away from being able to experience it. And I always really enjoy like thoughts on music from non-musicians. Like, I don't know. It's just a different take. It's more, I don't know. Yeah, it's just different. But
for sure.
It's not in my mind like, oh, well, you couldn't even do this. So what do you know? It's just, that's not how it works. I totally agree with this scene. Absolutely. I think you put it very well. The first time viewing it, it's really, I would even go as far as saying it's humbling to watch because you're like, oh man, like there is a side of this that it's so easy to criticize. I think a good takeaway from the scene is it's very easy to criticize. It's hard to create something of high value. But I would just not want people to see the movie and then shy away from developing their own criticisms of things. And so.
Exactly. And like, just like anything, like, you're going to hear a perspective from someone who doesn't do the thing that's different from someone who does. So you're getting a unique perspective of criticism that, it's definitely worth hearing.
Exactly. Yep. I think, like you said, and it is how you set it up, and I think it's a good way to put it. Like, if you removed the Margot situation and the fact that Tyler brought this hooker here to die, if you remove that, this would be so cruel. It would be so cruel.
Yes.
For sure.
Agreed. So, but with that, with Margot being in the situation she was in because of him, I enjoyed him harassing him like this.
Yep.
But I do feel like the writer's intention was to shit on critics here in a way that was unfair.
100%. I totally agree. Yeah. I think even Margot's having a hard time with it. She just found out. The beginning of this scene is her finding out Tyler brought her here knowing she was going to die.
Yes.
Even knowing that, she's having a hard time watching this happen. She's crying at the end of it. But I totally agree too that I think the writers are a little overzealous with the criticism of Tyler and Lillian too. Again, Lillian, there's nothing to imply that she's anything but an honest critic and very knowledgeable too.
Right.
And her lackey, the sycophant sidekick that she has, Ted, really obnoxious.
Oh yeah.
I think she would have been much less annoying if it weren't for him. I think some of that cringe is built up between the two of them, and she'll say something and he'll repeat what she said with a different phrasing, and she is pretty, not cruel, but she kind of like she doesn't seem to respect his thoughts very much. But
I mean, the way, even the tone of them talking is so
it really is. Oh my gosh.
It's like, ugh.
Yeah, it really is. But It's like again, the downside of people like Lillian is you have people who are professionally fatally damaged by their writings and their critiques. The upside is that the meritocracy thrives and you have the best rise, you have the cream rise. And so it goes both ways. And I would just say, just be honest and say what you really think of it, and it's all good.
And there's another character too that I don't feel like got any highlight at all of to why she was there to die, and that's the wife of the cheating guy.
Oh yeah.
It's like, why is she here?
Right.
Why is she getting killed? They don't even mention that at all.
And wow.
I thought that was kind of weird, but
interesting.
I don't know. Huh. Again, and I don't think I said it enough. Like, I have so much respect for these chefs. Like, they're doing so much, and not just what the chef says, but they're like chemists. They're like botanists. They're all this stuff put together to make this kind of top-notch cooking, and I really do have an appreciation of it. But if you're gonna cook at this high of a level, you're gonna get the highest level of criticism.
Exactly.
That's like just how it is.
That's the game. Yeah, exactly. That's just how it goes. There is no way around it. That is how it is. So, I would say I totally agree with how you set that up and how you said it. I think it's a little harsh on Tyler there in that scene. And, yeah, I don't know. What else,
I know I had something to say circling back to our other video about John Wick, but we can wrap this up first if there's anything else you wanted to say about the menu.
I think there's one more thing. I would just mention that we mentioned it on the channel before, and it's something I'm interested in rewatching soon. The Lobster.
Yeah.
I would mention it to contrast with this film. In The Lobster, they have really absurd behavior. They don't behave like real people, but it's so consistent and you buy it. And there are other movies like this, but I'm not against a movie having altered human behavior if it's consistent. I would say with the menu, they don't go into absurdity. I think they're trying very hard to keep it very realistic. I think it would have served them better to make it a little bit more absurd, make them act less realistic. So at the end, when they're all sitting literally burning alive, not tied down, just sitting there, it would be more symbolic. But it's not very symbolic because it's not absurd enough. So I'm just watching it like, why are you sitting there? Like,
why is no one getting up as they dress you up like a s'more? Why are you not getting up when your legs are on fire?
And they see it coming too. They're literally like, oh, the fire. Like, they literally say, like, they know what's going to happen. And they're just like, she tastes the chocolate hat, and I don't know.
No, this was stupid for sure.
So, but the point is, I love absurd behavior, and I can totally follow it, but it needs to be consistent. And the movie, it should have played into that a little bit more. But I think that's about it for me in this film. We could talk about more films.
Yeah, but overall it was enjoyable, and I would definitely recommend it to someone who's into like a kind of unique storyline, because it was not like other movies I've seen. There's things to compare it to, but not as much the story in terms, the story's kind of unique. I thought
it is,
but
yeah, and that's so that's about it for that there.
So just to circle back, though, because I promised everyone I was going to look up the swords that they were using in the motorcycle scene for John Wick 3.
Yes.
So I just wanted to touch on that really quick because I did look it up. We had called them, what did we call them last time? The sword, you had said the word, it started with a T. Anyway, I was calling it a katana, and then I knew that wasn't right. And then John came up with another name of a Japanese sword And actually, the one that they were using was in the middle in terms of size. So the katana is more than 60 centimeters for the blade. But what they were using is between 30 and 60 centimeters, and that is called a wakizashi. So a wakizashi was something that samurai would have carried in conjunction with the katana when they were outside. So the wakizashi would have been on top, and the katana would have been on bottom, where you can picture like a samurai carrying two swords on top of each other.
And with the shorter one, for sure.
So the shorter of the two is the wakizashi. That's what they had in that movie. But something that I found out, which was what I mentioned, I was wondering, was maybe it's traditional for a samurai or someone in Japanese culture to draw this sword with their left hand. And so maybe that's why all of the motorcyclists draw it with their left hand. Because there was something about that scene that wasn't as, not synchronized, but mirror image. What's the word I'm looking for? Symmetrical. There was something about the scene that wasn't as symmetrical as I thought it should have been. I thought they should have all drawn the sword on the same side that the motorcycle was on. But they all drew it with their left hand. And so I thought maybe that was because the sword is traditionally drawn with your left hand. But I found out that it's actually the opposite, because even if you were left-handed, you would have trained to draw the sword with your right, because it was traditional for a samurai to draw his sword with his right hand. So
interesting.
That was the opposite of what the movie did. And so I'm still wondering if there was a reason that they had them all do it with their left hand. And I haven't found the answer in terms of the movie, but I found out what the sword was and what traditionally they would have drawn, which was their right hand. So the search continues for the reason that the director had them all draw with their left hand.
I think we should write them. I think we should write them.
Because I couldn't find I looked up anything that the director said about it, and it was a quick search, but I didn't see anything that was said about those swords.
Interesting.
So,
all right, that can be an ongoing research project.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm interested. I like that kind of stuff. I love Japanese culture. All of the like samurai and katana aesthetic is awesome for me. But
for sure,
now I know it's a wakizashi.
Wakizashi. Now we know. There have been some other things that have come up that I've wanted to follow up on from our past streams, but it's been a while now. Maybe someday, maybe we could do once in a while. We could have like a redaction episode or something.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, that's the menu. Camp Divvy number, what is this, 16? Yeah, 16 now or something.
Tanto blade. That's the one that you had said.
Tanto.
And that is describing a similar sword style that is under 30 centimeters.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's like 3 size parameters for those swords.
Cool. Okay. All right. Cool. Now we know. So yeah. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out and listening to us talk about stuff. Sometimes you want a cheeseburger. Sometimes you want something better, and you want the best of the best, and there's nothing wrong with either. That's what I learned.
But if you watch that movie and you don't want a cheeseburger after it, I don't think you're an American. Get out of here.
Get out of here. And on that note, all right, I'll see you guys later.
And until next time, use your head.